Who else is having fun? I know I am. It is time for the next part. I have lost track of how many parts it is, so I'm just going to say it's the next part. It says to rewrite the expression using rational exponent notation. So you are not solving necessarily. It is just called rewriting. So right now this is a radical, and you're basically going to be taking this and making it look like that. It's something with an exponent that's a fraction, something with an exponent that's a fraction. And these ones are going to be the opposite. It's something with an exponent that's a fraction. You're going to be rewriting it as a radical of some sort. So what I do here, zoom, is I rewrite everything with an exponent. So like x has an exponent, y has an exponent, but 4 does not. So I add in this little 1 right here, because it is a 4 to the first power. This right here is called the index, and basically what's going to happen is that this number is going to go in the bottom of all of these exponents. So as I'm tracing out, since this is a 7, this is going to be 1 over 7, a 14 over 7, a 2 over 7. So you would have 4 to the 1/7, x to the 14 over 7, and y to the 2 over 7. So the 7, the index, just put over there. The only thing you have to do from here is that 14 over 7 does simplify. 1 over 7 doesn't, 2 over 7 doesn't. So your final answer is 4 to the 1/7, x, it'll be squared, and y to the 2/7. Because 14 over 7 equals 2. Okay. And that's it for number 7. For number 8, same thing, 12. 12 is to the first power, and y is to the 5th power. This one has no number here. If there is no number here, that means it is supposed to be a 2. Not a 1, not a blank, but a 2. So all of these exponents are going to be divided by 2. So you'd end up with 12 to the 1/2, y to the 5/2. And that's it. Can't simplify any of those, so that's it, 7 and 8. Going on to 9 and 10, rewrite the expression using radical notation. This is going backwards. One of the things I did in class was I talked about it's going to be the power over the root. Because where do roots grow? In the ground. And power plants are above the ground. Woo! So if power plants are above the ground, roots grow in the bottom. Well, first of all, this isn't realistic because you can't grow anything under power plants. But either way, it is to remind you that the 5, which is the power, is over the root, which is 4. So the root number will be 4, and the power will be 5, and then the 7 is just the regular thing. And that's the answer. So over here, same thing. The bottom number is 8, so it's going to be an 8th root. So then the other part is b, and the top number 3 stays as the exponent. And that's it. Awesome. So going on, it says to write each expression in simplest exponent form. Your answer should have no negative exponents and no decimals. Yeah, just no decimals. So if you're using a calculator, make sure you change it back to a fraction afterwards. If you're doing things with numbers, do not just plug this into a calculator and actually find out what number it is. I don't care what number it is. You're supposed to be simplifying it. Hence the whole word simplify right there. And no negative exponents. So in questions like down here, when you have negative exponents, we're just going to have to deal with them. We'll go start on number 11. With number 11, there's only one step. And the one step is just, do you know what to do with these numbers? And the answer to that right now is either yes or no, or give me a second to think about it, Mr. Anderson. In which case, okay, here's your second to think about it. All right, that was more than a second, but what you're supposed to do with these is multiply them. There's always going to be 3 things that you could do. Either multiply exponents, add exponents, or subtract exponents. And what you do just depends on what's going on. You subtract exponents when division is going on. You add when there's multiplying going on. And adding when there's multiplying going on, and you multiply exponents when neither of those things are happening. Like here, there's no multiplication, it's just g with some exponents. So when you multiply them, 2 over 1 is 2, and 5 over 3 is 15. And that's just it. All you had to know was to multiply the exponents, and that's the entire question right there. Multiply the exponents, and you're done. For 12, this is multiplying, right? X to the something times x to the something, which means you're going to be adding the exponents. So 3/4 plus 1/3. If you don't trust yourself, use a calculator to do 3/4 plus 1/3 and put that there, and that's your answer. Otherwise, to add them together, you need a common denominator. In this case, the common denominator is going to be 12. So you'd have to multiply this one by 3 to get 9 over 12. Multiply this one by 4 over 4 to get 4 over 12. And then 9 plus 4 is 13 over 12. But the big thing is knowing that you're supposed to add them. In 13, what you are supposed to do is subtract them. When you divide, you're supposed to subtract exponents. So you'd have 3/5 minus 2/7. Oops. And whatever 3/5 minus 2/7 is, that goes right here, and that's your answer. So once again, if you do it in a calculator, then you obviously don't have to be doing what I'm doing right now. But if you're doing it by hand, you have to get a common denominator. Multiplying is the only one where you don't need a common denominator here. But adding and subtracting you do. So I'll multiply this one by 7 and this one by 5, so they'll both be over 35, the common denominator. 7 times 3 is 21. 2 times 5 is 10. 21 minus 10 is 11 35ths. Boom. 14 is more interesting because these do not match, unlike the other one did. They were both y, so you could just subtract. These are not both 4, so you can't just subtract them right now. What you're going to have to do is make this not 16. As it turns out, 4 squared is equal to 16. So you take this 16, you scribble it out, and make it a 4 squared. Like so. What that allows you to do is to take this 4 to the 1/3 on top, take this 16, make it 4 squared, and this right here, once again, exponents, you would just multiply them, you would get 4 to the 2/3, because 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 3 is 3. And now you have a division problem where the bases match. And what do you do in a division problem where the bases match? You take the exponents and subtract them. So in this case, 1/3 minus 2/3, 1 minus 2 is -1. So unfortunately, we do get a negative exponent here, which means we can't be done because once again, it says up here no negative exponents. So what you do is you change it to a positive, but you put a 1 on top. You're flipping it. Negative exponents flip things into fractions. So 4 to the negative 1/3 is equal to 1 over 4 to the positive 1/3. And that's the final answer. Here, what you would do, at least what I would do, there's a couple ways to do it. I would just distribute this -3 to the exponents, because once again, it's exponents to exponents. You multiply, so you get x to the -6. And y to the positive 6. And just like in the previous problem, you can't have negatives. So this negative exponent is going to switch down to here and be x to the 6. Switches down to the bottom. This y to the 6 was already positive, so you don't need to switch it. It's just going to stay there. So it looks like everything's in the bottom now. And if everything's in the bottom, you just put a 1 on top. 21. X, Y, Z. There's nothing the same, so you can't combine any of them, which means the only thing you can do is the negative exponent stuff. X to the 2/3 is just going to stay x to the 2/3. Y to the negative 2/3 will switch to the bottom, positive 2/3 now. And z also negative, so it's going to switch out to the bottom and be 3/2. So it's just any negative stuff goes to the bottom. Any positive stuff stays up there. 2 more to go. Here, 3 to the 5th over 3 to the 7th. What do you do with the exponents? It's subtract. 5 minus 2 is negative, 5 minus 7 is negative 2. And you subtract these. Negative 4 minus 4. Negative 4 minus 4 is negative 8. Once again, these are both negative, so it's going to be 1 over 3 squared x to the 8th. They go down below. Keep in mind, 3 squared is actually a number. It's 9. So your answer is 1 over 9 x to the 8th. Here, exponents to exponents multiply. So you get x to the positive 1/20th. And y, 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. And 3 times 5 is 15. So nothing's going to happen with this x. It's positive and you can't simplify. But with the y, it's negative. So it's going to go down to the bottom. But also, you can simplify negative 5 over 15. You can divide them both by 5. In which case, if you divide this by 5, you get negative 1. If you divide that by 5, you get 3. So it's now going to the bottom because it's negative, and it'll be 1/3. And that's the answer to that. Okay, and we'll start off with the next page, next problems, next time. Have a good one, and see you then.